Should the Niners cut Jimmy Garoppolo before free agency? It's an interesting concept. It would be tipping their hand. They're trying very hard to like create an impression that they don't need a quarterback. Should they just do it? Rip off the Band-Aid? What do you guys think?
I still think they can trade him for something if they wanted to move on from him. And I know we're talking about it in your game later, but I still think there's something salvageable if they do end up deciding to hold on to him. I still think they could get something I talked about yesterday where I think they can get a pick out of the Patriots. It might not be the second round pick they surrendered to get him in the first place, but a fourth or fifth round pick might be possible down the line. If you need to go fifth or sixth just because it frees up a lot of money, that's fine, because getting an asset to free up money like they did with Quan Alexander is still worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Maverick. If you can get something in return for Jimmy Garoppolo, then you absolutely do it. But I think it's important to free up that $23.6 million in cap space prior to free agency, whether it's via a trade or just cutting him outright. And again, I support Jimmy Garoppolo. I really do. I'm just not a fan of the situation and how the 49ers are out there flirting with other quarterbacks. And it's clear as day. They're not committed to Jimmy Garoppolo long-term. And it's been that way ever since 2017. The way that they structured his contract, there have always been outs. There's always been outs. There's never truly been a long-term commitment to Garoppolo. And I think using that $23.6 million that you could clear up prior to free agency, using that money in free agency to help bring back guys like Trent Williams and bolster your roster. I like to call it building a bully. Build a bully, spend that money on both sides of the ball to load up on the trenches, because that's where the 49ers need a lot of work, especially on the offensive line, and put that rookie quarterback in a place to be successful year one.
It's interesting. When you brought up this topic, I was like, no, you can't do this, because you would be tipping your hand. And then you go into the draft and everyone knows what you need. And now you try to trade up to number 9 and that team's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to need that second round pick because you're desperate. Yep. But that's a good point. I mean, I don't really think the Niners are going anywhere one way or another. It's a very difficult division. Their team isn't really set. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have an offensive line that's great. So if they were to cut Jimmy Garoppolo and sign a guy like Alex Smith or Ryan Fitzpatrick or Andy Dalton or whoever, like, what difference does it make? Who cares? You're freeing up cap space, and now you're building a team for 2022 or whatever. That's cool with me. The only thing is you save a little bit more money if you hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo and trade him after June 1. And as Maverick said, he may have some trade value at some point, like Mav's idea yesterday. Trade him for a 5th or a 6th and then send that pick to Carolina for Teddy Bridgewater. That's clever too, but what Nick is really swaying me with, like, yeah, if you cut him now, you free up all this cap space. You can sign someone who's basically just as good and more durable than him for a 5th of the price, and keep some of the people that are gonna. Because what good does it do creating cap space after June 1? It helps you next year.
Exactly. Yep.
It helps you next year, but I don't know. What do you think now?
Well, I think if they did cut him after June 1, that still would help, because I think just as the offseason goes on, teams are going to realize salary cap, they have to cut some guys because it's going to be really restrictive in some ways. And especially after the draft, teams are going to be getting guys that they possibly didn't think they would get in the first place. And then maybe you are able to move on from that cornerback that's $9 million on the cap, or that linebacker that's $5 million on the cap because you got a rookie in the 3rd round you're really comfortable with. So that cap space wouldn't be wasted necessarily, but it still would be much better to have it now than later.
And there could be like a second round of free agency after June 1 because this year is weird.
Yeah. I have one more thing to add. You just have to weigh out the pros and cons. The con is clearly that it tips your hand and teams are going to know that you're trying to trade up for a quarterback in round 1, more than likely. But the pro, that's what you're weighing out, is the $23.6 million extra in cap space this specific year, when all these veterans are going to be released over the course of the next 2 weeks, like we've already been seeing. Is that worth tipping your hand and probably parting with future assets a little? I think it is.
Because if you don't do it, you're probably going to lose Trent Williams or Jason Verrett or both.
And if you do it, it's almost a lock to bring back Trent Williams. Yeah. And then you don't have to spend the draft capital this year on a left tackle. So I think it's worth it. I do. And I think it's the correct.
The only question is, with these big time free agents sign on with the Niner team that just cut their quarterback.
Well, I thought about this in the shower right before I came on. I think Kyle Shanahan has the respect around the
Right.
NFL where he'll be able to explain and articulate his thoughts to any free agent. It's not gonna they're gonna be like, oh, you have a rookie quarterback coming in. I'm not interested. I'm not talking to you guys. I'm not willing to negotiate. I don't think going the quarterback route would go that far.